We've got a new setup here. I've got the Pro Gamer headpiece. Apparently, I shouldn't talk as loud. It sounds like it can be a little overpowering. I need to modulate my voice. It's going to be hard for me. And I got my makeup tutorial external camera. It's kind of weird. It's like that, like a circle of light. You can probably see it in my glasses. Anyway, this isn't necessary, but I'm all in, man. You got to get the gear. If you're going to do something, you got to do it right. So, you know, I got to get in all into this stuff. Um, Here is an anarchist joke, an anarchist meme that I don't know. I guess you might like it by the end of the lecture. You might think it's funny. Maybe 75% of you will think it's funny, and 25% will be offended. But tough luck. It's not what anarchism is about. Okay, so we're going to be talking about Darwin and then Kropotkin. A weird combination, it might seem. You got Charles Darwin, evolution guy, and then Kropotkin, who is a anarchist guy. But they go together very well, and Kropotkin is very, very influenced by Darwin, so it makes sense for them to be together. Okay, so old Chucky Darwin. Let's talk about him first. Um, Charles Darwin. I'm gonna move myself out of the way here. All kinds of new stuff. There's old Charles. Um, he is one of the main thinkers of the 19th century. Certainly, if you go to college, or when you go to college, if you go to college, you will maybe see a course offering that is Marx, Freud, Darwin, or Marx, Freud, Darwin, Douglas. Sometimes it's Marx, Freud, Nietzsche. But the classic pairing is Marx, Freud, Darwin, or Marx, Freud, Darwin, Douglas. Why did these guys together? Marx makes the most important intervention in terms of how human beings think about hierarchy, right? Class hierarchy or just hierarchy, right? You took patterns, you took modern world or AP world. You know that hierarchy has been around for a long time. Marx calls that into question as being a natural thing. So very important. Freud, obviously, with psychology and the way people thought about or think about the brain and how our brain, how our subconscious works and how that affects who we are, how we behave. Again, totally revolutionary, right? It's just like, before that, it's just not like, or it was the devil or something if you had some kind of evil thoughts, as opposed to some kind of psychological thing. Huge intervention. Darwin, no duh, obvious evolution, a huge intervention in not only natural sciences but also in with religion. I mean, this is one of the major um, uh, um, uh, forces Darwin's writing that starts to challenge, right, something that hadn't been challenged in a very long time. And then Frederick Douglass, obviously with issues of race in the lens of the United States, but also in the kind of transatlantic world in which all of these guys were writing. Frederick Douglass's his writing and thinking about racial equality is way before its time. Right. So Douglass, even you read it in 2020, as they say, he's becoming more and more recognized and more popular. So Douglass is also very important. And these people are, if you took a class, Marx Freud, when I was in college, a TA, there was a teacher's assistant for a class that was Marx Freud Darwin, and it was intellectual history class. Intellectual history is a kind of history, but it's a history where you read this kind of stuff. You read philosophy and you do a kind of history of ideas. Who read whom, where they get their ideas from, et cetera, et cetera. So let's get into it. Enough background. Natural selection, right? So we're not up in the dry lab or whatever kind of lab you learn about this stuff in. But for our purposes here, and you're all juniors and seniors, and you probably know this stuff. Natural selection is something that's important for Darwin, something that he writes a lot about. And this is the idea that change, inheritable traits, happens right over generations and generations and generations. And right, natural selection, all of that kind of stuff. What does it have to do with ethics or philosophy? It has to do with human nature. So the idea that all these guys are theorizing about the state of nature, or Aristotle is talking about the family structure being the kind of basis of society. Once you throw evolution into the ring here, there's no competition, right? That Darwin really he shows us that the social contract is actually biological, right? That we see this in other primates. We see it as not some theoretical thing, but people other animals in particular too, have kind of social contracts, certain rules or whatever in the natural world that precede society. Okay, so that's the first reading. The second little brief reading is from The Descent of Man, and that is about natural morality, right? That morality is biological, not societal. It makes sense biologically for us to evolve in a way that is moral. For one individual to act immorally might benefit them, right, in the short run, probably not in the long run. But for a whole group of people to act immorally would not be advantageous, right, for their evolution, and they probably wouldn't last that long. So here, this is a pushback against Hobbes, obviously, as Kropotkin does. I mean, everyone's just been kind of dunking on Hobbes since we read him. I mean, Montesquieu does it, Locke does it, Rousseau does it. Here's Darwin doing it. Kropotkin will do it. So this idea that it's not going to work, right? All against all, nasty, brutish, and short. It's just not. It wouldn't be like that even if we gave in to Hobbes's like theory, right? Okay, state of nature, whatever. It wouldn't work that way. And Darwin, more to the point, says that's all made up anyway. Right, because of evolution, we can show that it's not that way. Very quickly, detour into social Darwinism. This is the idea, right, that the best adapted, most successful social groups survive and thrive in society generally. It is where we get the term survival of the fittest. It is not Darwin, it is Herbert Spencer, as I point out in my A-Push lecture on scientific racism. Actually, Herbert Spencer's phrasing for survival of the fittest is so popular that Darwin actually includes it in his second edition of The Origin of Species, right, to try to like get more support for his writing, but it's not in the original edition. It's not Darwin, it's Herbert Spencer, and it appropriates natural selection, which is a biological idea, and applies it or misapplies it to culture. And it's still around, right? People still throw around survival of the fittest in kind of casual ways, and it's still right with us when people talk about inequality, or how different regions develop differently. And it's unfortunate, right? Because it really is, it's one of the most kind of influential misreadings in history. So that's Darwin and social Darwinism. And the social Darwinism aspect is important as we transition into Kropotkin, because Kropotkin ain't having it. He didn't like the social Darwinism. He likes the Darwinism. So anarchism, the history of anarchism, we'll go over in a second. These are all the various different kind of like anarchist flags. The red and black is like the main one, right? That's anarcho communism. That is the most prominent belief system. And then there's eco, and there's gender, and there's all this other stuff. But the other one, as the meme at the beginning pointed out, is the gold and black, or yellow and black, which is anarcho communism, which they get a bad rep, and maybe not without reason, for their kind of theories of like just no holds barred capitalism is the best kind of anarchism, where anarcho-communism is more like the Kropotkin style of mutual aid, very much against capitalism or profiteering, exploitation of others, etc. So anarchy history. Pierre-Joseph Proudhon is an early kind of anarchist writer. He's also a critic of Marx. He thinks that rent is not good. Um, uh, Property from rent is or interest is not okay. So like just making money off of money, like not making money working, but making money because of capital gains or making money from rent is exploitative to Proudhon. He believes in what would be called mutualism. So no laws, no contracts, just kind of mutualism. Mikhail Bakunin also disagrees with Marx. I mean, this is the main thing. People think, oh, anarchy and communism are opposites. They're not. They're just different ways of thinking about how you get to a stateless society. So for Marx, you got to go through this whole historical process of capitalism evolving into socialism and socialism evolving into communism, where the anarchists effectively say, like, why do we just jump right to the communism? Like it's a jump right to the end. We don't need to like build up a state apparatus in order to tear down the state apparatus. Let's just jump right to mutual aid and collectivism and mutualism, and that's it. Like we don't need all of this fancy in between stuff. So that's the main difference. They both want to get to the same destination. They just have very different, right? One of them is using Waze, and one of them is using Google Maps or something, right? Alternate route. Um, Bakunin, collectivist, anarchist, and then Peter Kropotkin, anarcho-communist, who's inspired by Darwin. William Godwin is not in this list, but he's one of the first. He's English. Actually was influential over Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson read Godwin and liked what Godwin was saying. And Godwin is writing at kind of the intersection of utilitarianism and anarchism. And he believes that eventually, right, we should be able to govern ourselves, right? So effectively taking what Locke is saying and then taking it to the nth degree, that we shouldn't need a government because we are perfectible beings, and in the perfect state, we don't need any of that stuff. Okay, here's two more memes. Crapping on anarcho-capitalism. Obviously, the one I showed you at the beginning maybe makes more sense now. And then the other meme, which I think is maybe funny, but also points at what many critics of anarcho-capitalism would point out, is that it's a self-negating system. Right, so if you believe in freedom by total unfettered capitalism, you ain't gonna be free for long, unless you're right Jeff Bezos or something. So if you like your civil liberties, you like your guns, you like your whatever it is, you ain't gonna have it if the guy with more money than you gets to buy the United States. Memes shouldn't be explained, though. I suppose I just did them a big disservice. And then, of course, the shopping cart wheels. You get it. I mean, I don't know if you've ever pushed it. Maybe you've never pushed a shopping cart in your life, but it really do be like that. Okay, so what is anarcho-communism? This is Kropotkin's variety here, right? Anarcho-communism. So that's the one we're going to be talking about. What is it? You have some images here. May Day rally. May Day is like Labor Day for the rest of the world, but more radical. And it's May 1st. And you see a lot of the red and black, right, anarcho-communist kind of flags. Image from the Spanish Civil War. The Republicans in the Spanish Civil War, where many of them were anarchist or anarcho-communists, also socialists and all kinds of others. And then Rojava, which is a region in Kurdistan, Syria, that has been, although much diminished by Russians and Syrians, was allied actually with the United States for a while, a autonomous region that is effectively anarcho-communist, very egalitarian between women and men. Obviously, you see women here practicing target shooting, and they basically are run by anarcho-communist principles. So those are examples in the real world, right? People always want to go, well, how would it actually work? I mean, we have real examples of it. What anarchism is not is like, we're not supposed to be, right? It's not supposed to be, right, all of this stuff. Antisocial, individualism, liberty and license, right? So it's not the state of license, as Locke would say. It certainly would be a state of liberty, but not of license. It's not just smashing stuff, right? There's a whole tradition that I went through of, the thinking about it and what it is. And it's not just like chaos for the sake of chaos. So this is generally what people think about when they think of anarchism, and it's not those things. It is, right, the theory, the ideology, decentralized economy, so economic networks that are loosely connected but not centralized or hierarchical. It is all about cooperation and mutual aid. That's the title of the Kropotkin reading, is mutual aid. People helping other people with no need for hierarchy or government. Here's another meme for us here. Get myself out of the way. I always bring you the freshest stuff. So here you go. Let's see who's texting me. Getting messages. Okay. So yes, it is evolving backwards. Kropotkin doesn't like capitalism one bit. He's an anarchist. And here is Kropotkin all in one go. So he likes Darwin, right? So in Darwin, Darwin claims, look, individual competition happens. Yeah, natural selection, it is about individual competition, but also there is a lot of cooperation, right? That you cannot survive without cooperation, as he says in the second little short reading from Descent of Man. Herbert Spencer, right? Again, the most influential misreading in history, right? Or willful, probably misreading. Doesn't like that stuff. So for Kropotkin, it's all about mutual aid, right? He says, right, the quote here, reckless competition for personal advantage isn't natural. It's a misapplication of 19th century, or excuse me, reckless competition of personal advantage, end quote, isn't natural. It's a misapplication of 19th century economic theory into biology and evolution. So he says that capitalism effectively is where we take an evolutionary wrong turn, hence the, right? So Kropotkin and his ideas of anarcho-communism, like Rousseau, he thinks that society makes us who we are. Work for 10 hours, make 30 loaves of bread, get paid enough to buy one loaf of bread. Doesn't seem right to Kropotkin. It's great for the owner, not great for the worker. So again, this is where Kropotkin and Marx would say, like, yeah, sure, we agree on this point. 19th century scientific racism says, yeah, that is the way it is because some people are just more fit. So the person raking in all the money, the robber baron, the Rockefeller, the Vanderbilt, they're just more fit. So tough luck. Kropotkin says, what? Like, show me an evolution where that actually makes sense. Kropotkin is looking at working conditions in the 19th century, early 20th century, and he sees people that don't like working. They don't want to work. And he says, well, it's no wonder people don't want to work, right? It's not the problem of like human beings being lazy. Again, this is where he would agree with Marx or Ben Franklin on the idea of homo faber, right? That human beings are working beings. We like working. We love working. We just hate it when we are not satisfied by it, when it's not rewarding in some way. We really, really don't like it. And that doesn't fulfill our human nature. So the issue is not our human nature about being lazy or not wanting to work hard. It's actually, says Kropotkin, capitalism, right? Capitalism is the thing that makes you like hate your life and hate your job and, just working for the weekend. How is this not communism? Again, emphasis on free organization of individuals, not the power of the collective. So this is a fine point distinction, but it's a very, very important one because for anarchists or anarcho-communists, the idea is that it is free individual. The emphasis is very much on the individuals, right? Collaborating, organizing together, aiding each other, where communism does often emphasize a power of the collective, right? The proletariat, the masses rising up. There's a very kind of like I talked about methodological collectivism, like with the French, Rousseau and Montesquieu, Marx is influenced by that idea of methodological collectivism. So it is about a general will, or right, a spirit of the people, and that's not what anarcho-communists are about. Anarcho-communists are more emphasized on free organization in individuals, but again, to the same end, right? A kind of like stateless, classless society based on mutual aid. They're just coming at it from very different points. That is Kropotkin and anarcho-communism. That is all I have for today. And Darwin, obviously, is a longer lecture, 20 minutes, because I'm talking about two people. Hopefully, you can get a look at this before class. If not, then you can watch it after class. And I'll see you when I see you.